This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
You know, there's no better way to demonstrate your product than live in person. If you can get your customer to touch it, feel it, and care about it, then if he has any desire for it at all, he's going to buy it.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. I'm Todd Ersley with my shop assist, and today I've got with me Bret Voelkel of RideTech. He and I go back pretty far. Again, this was somebody that I met with the Optima Ultimate Streetcar Challenge back when I had my Evo. This back in I think it was 2012 that we first met up, and he had probably the coolest Factory 5 33 Ford I've ever seen that was, totally custom built at their shop, and it had all kinds of suspension upgrades and big tires and lots of power. And man, it was just an absolutely beautiful car. And then he and I met up at the finals in Las Vegas when Goldberg, the wrestler, the ex-wrestler, was actually the one who used to do the announcing for it. And he absolutely loved the rivalry that we had, because he and I, Bret and I were head to head in the autocross, because that was back when they used to make them very tight. So all-wheel drive, light and nimble, made a big difference back in those days. They've kind of shifted it towards more kind of a big, flowy, fast autocross course. But Bret and I were, I think it was less than a hundredth of a second. Yeah. And Bret actually beat me out. So he got first, and I think I got second in the autocross. But that was a whole lot of fun kind of seeing the dichotomy of the two different cars out there battling it out. And that kind of epitomized what the Optima Ultimate Streetcar Challenge was all about. But kind of getting back on track here. Bret, how have you been doing today?
Oh, busy as usual. There's just all kinds of stuff going on, and my son just graduated from high school, so that was a big week last week.
Congrats. Yeah, that's good.
Getting ready to go on vacation in Florida tomorrow, so trying to get ready for that. And then, of course, we're always busy at the shop, keeping stuff going out the door and developing new products.
Man, that's fantastic.
Never a lack of activity there.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I've seen a whole bunch of cool products that you guys have made pretty recently over the past couple of years, and then, leading up to pretty recently. So excited to hear about those products and, what you guys are thinking for the future. But to kind of get things kicked off here, can you give us kind of your background? Where did you grow up? What were you doing as a kid? Just kind of bring us up to the point of starting RideTech, or I guess at the time it was Air Ride Technologies.
Right. So I was born and raised and still live in Jasper, Indiana. And, I went through high school like most everybody, kind of fiddling around with cars. My dad or my brothers, none of those guys were into cars. There was just a few of us that hung around in high school, kind of got into it. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't go to college or anything. I didn't really know what I wanted to do up until I was about 25. So I didn't go to college, but worked a series of jobs around Jasper here. And then in 1987, I got hired on by a company out of Florida called World of Performance as a tech rep for MSD and Autometer on the NHRA Drag Racing circuit. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that started my my professional career in motorsports, I guess. And then in 1990, went to work for a company called Blower Drive Service out of California. Great group of people there. Lance and Scott and Craig Railsback and Larry Hall and all those guys, they were just great to work with. Still keep in touch with them to this day. And in 1990, at the end of 94, after traveling 300 days a year for the last 8 years, I decided that was probably enough of that.
A little exhausting.
I had just met my wife, future wife, Sharon, and decided I didn't want to travel as much. I kind of wanted to settle down. So I came back to Jasper and actually ran a tool truck for a couple of years. And while I was building a new hot rod, a blown injected Pro Street 1970 Mustang. And that was the first air suspension car I ever messed with. I decided that I wanted ride height adjustable suspension. And after all those years of riding down the interstate, staring at the back of a semi on air springs, I decided that air springs was the way to do it. So I went to the truck store and bought a pair of air springs and stuck them in the suspension. And lo and behold, the car goes up and down and it rides nice. And I thought, I bet some other hot rodders would like that. So I built a few more systems, and we actually incorporated air ride technologies in April of 1996.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So, yeah, like getting into sourcing those parts, to me, I would think, they wouldn't have, like the truck store wouldn't have something light duty enough to go for a car. But are they just pumping it up with so much air and you were just reducing the amount in the shock itself?
Well, there's a huge learning curve. There is definitely such a thing as too big of an air spring, as well as too little. It's not just, one size fits all. Fortunately, Firestone makes over 700 different styles and low capacities of air springs. They probably make more than that now. That's the last time I counted. So I happened to land on the what I call a 255 air spring, which is 6.5 inches in diameter. It has a low capacity of about 2,100 pounds a piece at 100 psi.
Okay.
And we actually use that to this day.
Oh, nice. So that was a pretty good find for what you wanted to do, and it still works out well.
Yeah. Well, after I built that Mustang, I made a trip up to Firestone in Indianapolis, and to discuss getting set up direct with them and working with them on air suspension stuff. Of course, I didn't have an appointment. I didn't know anybody up there. I couldn't get past the front desk. So I literally walked around the building until I found an unlocked door and walked in and somebody's going to talk to me here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first guy that I ran into was a guy named Paul Gibson, who's an old hot rodder, and he was one of the head sales guys up there. And I explained my situation, and bless his heart, he took me under his wing and set me up with all the stuff I needed, and that's how I got started with Firestone.
Jeez, it sounds like there were lots of stars that aligned to get that first thing going. Like,
well, yeah, and people ask about this all the time, and I the short version is I've been really lucky. The longer version is you just keep hammering away at it until you make things go your way. You just don't quit. So that's just another example. You walk around the building till you find an unlocked door, and
yep.
There was at least a 50% chance that they would have called security and I'd have been hauled out of there on my ass, but it didn't go that way. So a bit of luck fell my way.
Yeah, luck and perseverance combined together was led you to success.
So we started in '96. I worked the business by myself for a couple of years, and then my wife, who had been working for a regional grocery chain for the last 21 years, bless her heart, her paycheck was enough to take care of both of us, because anybody who owns a small business knows you don't get a paycheck for the first couple of years, in most of them anyhow, and this one was no exception. So we were finally doing enough business by about '98 that she quit her job and came to work full time for the company, and we did it all. We made the product, we developed the product, we made the product, we packed it, we shipped it, we took in the money, we paid the bills. It was just her and I, and then pretty shortly we hired another guy, and then I got to tell you, all hell broke loose after that. We went from 1 employee to 20 employees in about 2 years.
Okay, Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested on like that very beginning time. Like, what exactly were you making? Yeah, because there's a lot of components to an air ride suspension. So, was
my first dedicated application was air springs for an aftermarket Mustang 2 suspension.
Okay,
so,
which is a pretty popular modification for lots of.
I got my start in the street rod market. So the Mustang 2 was kind of the standard of the industry. And, I decided that to promote the business, I had to advertise. And, so back then, the only form of advertising available was print magazines. So I called Hot Rod Magazine. And, of course, they wanted at the time $50,000 a month for an ad. Of course, that's It might as well have been 5 million.
Yep.
I didn't have either
Yeah.
number. So the first guy that I talked to out there was a guy named Colin McLemore, who is now the owner, founder and owner of Max Tie Downs. So at
yes,
that
I was
time,
wondering why I recognize that name, because I'm trying to get them set up with an interview as well. So
yeah. So, in talking with Colin, he suggested that my first application be Mustang 2, and he coincidentally had a complete Mustang 2 front suspension, and he graciously sent it to me, and I made the brackets to put the air springs in there and the shock. This was before the Shockwave, so you had air springs and a standalone shock. So I made all that and put it together in a kit and advertised it. It was a really, really universal do-it-yourself kit. It was, I got to tell you, it was by today's standards, it was pretty crude, but it did work. And we sold it for the arbitrary amount of $1,320.
Okay, yeah. So
same number of feet
cheap.
in a quarter mile. No, it wasn't, but that included, the compressor and the tank and the at that time paddle switches to
up
inflate,
and down,
deflate, and the air springs and the shock absorbers. So for shock absorbers, I literally was buying the blue Monroe shocks at Napa, 10 at a time, because that's all I could afford. Fast forward to today, we make our own shocks using Fox components, and we go through about 35,000 a year. So it's quite a bit different scale there, but that's how it all started. And then since the beginning, we've been in constant development of applications and new technology. Probably the biggest piece of new technology, not new anymore, but the Shockwave. With the help of Firestone and a couple other guys, developed a way to marry a shock absorber and an air spring, much like a coilover, and we call it the Shockwave. And I was fortunate enough to get 2 or 3 patents on it, and it's worked virtually unchanged for the last 18 years.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to package and put it into stock location stuff if it's not any bigger.
Yep. It's at this point, it's rare for us to develop a new application with anything other than the Shockwave in it. Once in a while, the Shockwave isn't the appropriate choice, but almost everything uses a Shockwave. It's just too easy to fit in.
Yeah. So did you, from the beginning kind of envision yourself owning a company, or was this just like an opportunity that presented itself and you just ran with it?
I never envisioned owning a company. It wasn't necessarily a dream of mine, but I did like to sleep indoors and eat warm food, so I had to do something. And this opportunity, presented itself, so we took it and ran with it. And, we continue to identify opportunities all the time like that. Probably the most recent major thing we've developed is a Delrin lined articulating rod end called the R joint. And that came out of our racing program. And, I certainly didn't envision selling R joints to non-automotive customers, but I've been contacted by several non-automotive customers that are looking for such a device. And believe me, compared to the racing market, their numbers are just staggering. Their annual usage, just staggering. It just blows me away. But you identify opportunities like that all the time. It's what we do. And
is that the demo that you bring to the shows where you have like a conventional one and then yours next to it, and it's just much easier to much easier to move. There's no binding or sticking.
Right. Yeah. So I got this little display on our trailer, and it's got a rubber joint, and it's got a polyurethane joint, and it's got an old Heim joint, and it's got one of our R joints, and they're all attached to about a foot long bar, and the customer can go up there and work it up and down, and the polyurethane squeaks and squawks in protest, and the rubber is it's just bound up completely. And the Heim joint, once they get a few miles on them, they get loose and rattle, and this R joint, we've had them in field testing now for over 2 years in the harshest of environments, and we can't kill them. They stay tight. They don't make any noise. They just, they've really resolved a lot of problems. And, this is all stuff that's been developed in our racing program. when we had the Corvette, the 48-hour Corvette, we found we were killing Heim joints in the rear camber rods every event, no matter how much we paid for them or where we got them or whatever. We were killing them. So I decided to work on resolving that problem, and this was the resolution. And then we put them in some, a couple of the guys' trucks at work just for some longevity testing. And we found that the ride quality really improved, and they just lasted forever, even under, we deliberately tried to abuse them with grease and sand and dirt and stuff, and we just can't kill them. So, that's an example of the kind of real world testing we do with this stuff before we release it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys definitely do a lot of in-house R&D, on all the products that you make with all the cool cars you build. And so that's something that we can kind of touch on the various aspects of that here in a little bit. So, you've worked, you grew up in Ohio. Is that right? Ohio?
No, Indiana.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So
Jasper,
grew up in Indiana and then moved to Florida, then to California, then back to Indiana. So when I think of that, I'm like, man, why didn't you stay in California and build this? So, do you think that location has helped you or hurt you, in the path to growing the business as large as you have?
Well, I think overall it's been a real help, and I never did move to California. I spent a lot of time out there, but I ran that display program from here in Indiana.
Okay.
And I very quickly discovered, even before BDS, that Jasper, Indiana, while it seems it's in the middle of nowhere, it's actually in the middle of everywhere. I can be in any major city east of Dallas, Texas, in a day. Florida, New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, Dallas, Kansas City. I can get to all those places in a day's drive. If you live in California, first of all, you can't afford to live there, in my opinion. And second of all, a day's drive may not even get you out of the state, depending on which direction you're going. So the other thing I found about looking back on it, being in the middle of the cornfield, as I call it, there's less distractions here. So in the late 90s, when we were really growing our business, there were lots of air suspension shops on the West Coast, none of which are around anymore. And I have to believe, after talking to people and looking back on it, it's because they were distracted by doing installations, and they were distracted by walk-in customers, and they were distracted by all these different opportunities that were laid in front of them, and they lost focus. And we didn't have that problem here. There was nothing to do in Jasper, Indiana for me except build air suspension applications and send them out the door. That's it. So I think it's been a help.
Is the the workforce, is it pretty labor skill driven in that area?
Well, we really haven't had a huge problem finding qualified help.
Okay.
So, I've got 2 educated, trained engineers, degreed engineers on staff now, but that situation's only about 3 or 4 years old. Up until then, it was just me and a couple of the guys that was developing all this stuff, and we didn't.
You're just like fabricators.
Yeah, we didn't. We may not have had the degreed. The engineering degree, but we collectively had a huge amount of experience fixing stuff on the side of a road at night in the rain on the side of a mountain or something. We fix stuff. We overcome problems, and we don't quit until it's fixed. And I joke with my engineers, my degreed engineers, once in a while. I say, well, your training has taught you, where to go to find something and how to do stuff. Now I'm going to teach you how to care about it. And that's been about the way it's gone too. I got a couple of really good engineers, and they know a lot of good stuff. But yeah, we've educated them and all of us on how to make the customer care about it.
Very cool.
And, it's simple stuff. Rounding the corners of a bracket, slotting the holes to allow for the various dimensions of these old cars. Just real world stuff like that.
Yeah, that was something that when you're designing stuff on CAD, everything fits perfect, but in the real world, that is not the case.
Well, you know what? That's kind of an interesting process too. So up until about a year ago, our process was to bring a car in and measure it up, plot the suspension geometry, and then identify the sins and cut and bend and grind and weld parts, metal together until we come up with a suspension system that we wanted. And, sometimes you got to do refinements, so you got to repeat that process. And here about a year ago, we finally got together all the resources necessary to digitally scan a vehicle and create a suspension system digitally in the computer and send that information to the appropriate machines and let them cut, bend, and do whatever. And the second gen Camaro system that we debuted, we started shipping, I think, in January on this, was the first system that was completely created in the computer before any parts were ever put on the car. And it has turned our whole development process upside down in a good way. It's quicker. More importantly, it's more accurate. And most importantly, it actually works better.
Yeah.
I was really skeptical of the process, but I'm a big believer in it now. It's the only way we'll do it now.
That's very cool. Just one more question about the location. What about like shipping stuff? So you've got large boxes. Are you guys centrally? Is there like a hub near you?
Well, Louisville is the worldwide headquarters for UPS.
Okay.
So we're about an hour and 15 minutes from Louisville. UPS and FedEx go everywhere, every day. So do the trucking companies. Shipping it's a non-issue. They come and pick up. We use UPS and FedEx, so they both pick up every day. It's no problem at all to get a package delivered overnight to California or anywhere in the country.
Yeah, that's mind blowing to me now, especially with the size of the boxes, because you guys sent back some stuff for my Camaro after you installed the street grip system, and I couldn't even pick up the box, and it got shipped and it was fine. There wasn't any damage to it, and all the parts were in there, and I was just astonished by that. How it's able to do it.
It's quite amazing. I've never been through Worldport in Louisville, but I've seen some documentaries and stuff on it. It is quite the amazing process.
And we've had, a couple guests on here that are, making stuff and shipping things out. And you guys, one kind of logistics question is, like boxes and packaging. So you guys have created your own boxes, correct? Like they're branded with your name?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everything has the RideTech logo on it. Everything that goes out of the building has a RideTech logo on it except the toilet paper, and I'm still working on that.
Still working on that. So is there like a company you can go to that, you say, hey, do they help you with box sizing? Do you tell them what size box you want? Like, is that a pretty easy process? Are there vendors out there that do that?
It's actually part of the application development process now. It didn't used to be. When we first got started, my wife worked at the grocery store, so I would go to the grocery store and get boxes. That's when we were shipping one system a week.
Okay.
And a buddy of mine, his dad worked at the newspaper, so I got cut off ends of newsprint to use for packing material.
Okay.
Now that has transitioned into a significant portion of our warehouse is dedicated to store boxes. And we have boxes custom created in the case of the street grip line, and in the case of some really fast moving stuff, we design the box digitally, or actually we give. It's kind of interesting. We in a small town of 15,000 people, we actually have 2 corrugated companies here in town.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're blessed with the right combination of resources to make that happen.
Yeah, that's something that I've kind of been intrigued with on, some companies do an excellent job. I mean, you guys are one of them that make your own boxes and everything, and it really adds a level of professionalism, if you don't just get a plain brown box with clear tape on it, it's branded with your product.
And it's all part of making the customer care about it, in my opinion. When they get a box that's obviously well built, you get them on your side before they even open the box. If the box looks good, if the packing looks good, then, if the part may not fit quite right out of the box, because you know how these old cars are, you've already got the benefit of the doubt, right from the get-go. I had one guy refer to it as the Steve Jobs effect. Apple has always done and continues to do a wonderful job of packaging their products to the perception of elegance. Mm-hmm. You know, we try to do the same thing.
So kind of shifting gears here, was there ever a point growing the business where you kind of thought, man, I don't think this is going to work out, you know, and what did you guys do moving forward to overcome that?
I don't think I ever doubted the ability to make it work. Honestly, we were so busy in the early days that there was just no time to think. And you know, I mean, honestly, we were just making mobster money in the early 2000s. If you couldn't make money from the mid 90s to the mid 2000s, you were just doing it wrong.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, it's a good thing, because when the depression of 08, 9, and 10 hit, we gave most of that back. That was probably the toughest time, even more so than the early days. Was, you know, once you've been really successful and then you take a 40% hit in business, that's tough, because you have to send people home, mm-hmm. and you have to disappoint their families. It's not just the person you're sending home; it's their whole family. And we lost some people. We probably lost 10 or 15 people during that period. But you know, it was a matter of survival at that point. My kids call those the lost years. There were 2 summers there that Sharon and I went back to working 12, 15 hours a day. And, you know, a lot of times the kids were at that time 6 and 9, something like that. And they'd be right in there with us, you know, just, they were really good about it. That's just what you have to do, you know?
Yep. Yeah. What about, you know, would you consider that to be like the worst experience, or is there maybe something else that, like, you know, a product didn't work out as you want, or, you know, a car didn't get built, or something happened at the facility? You know, is there ever like a bad experience that you had?
I do a pretty good job at separating business from the really important stuff. The really important stuff is the family and the people you work with. Business is business. You know, products don't work out. I've had product failures. I've had market failures. I've had, you know, years that I've lost money. It's, you know, it's all part of it. But you know, when you have to disappoint people for whatever reason, that's the really bad part. You know, business is business. It's just you know,
kind of roll with the punches, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you just drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I've had customers, you know, call and want to fuss about, you know, you forgot this 3/8 washer and I'm going to sue you over it. And I'm like, yeah, you know. Turn the next page in the Hot Rod magazine you're reading and wait till the event and then figure out if you can solve their problem or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to kind of discuss is the name change. So, you know, wanted to hear, you know, your reasoning behind doing it, you know, and how that actually came to, because it used to be called Air Technology. Right. And that's what, you know, I grew up knowing it as, right. You know, seeing it on, you know, just I mean, it was pretty much every single bagged truck that I ever saw when I grew up. So what was the reasoning behind that? What kind of brought that on?
Well, it was a combination of things. During those years leading up to that, we had developed a couple of military contracts, and that turned out to be a pretty good deal. And we decided that we wanted to pursue more of them. Now, keep in mind that even though as RideTech Technologies, we built, you know, tubular control arms, 4-links, spindles, sway bars, all this kind of stuff, and was capable of doing, you know, just about anything. But we found that in the military arena, the name RideTech Technologies was really holding us back. We wouldn't even be considered for a contract because, well, this project doesn't require air suspension, so why would we contact somebody called RideTech Technologies? At the same time, we had also made the decision to expand beyond just air suspension into the coilover market. So we worked with Fox on you know, developing a line of coilovers for the hot rod market, and we knew that the public was not going to buy coilovers from a company called RideTech Technologies.
Okay, yep.
And the third thing, and this is where, you know, luck plays into it a little bit. RideTech.com had been our website address since the very beginning in 1996.
Oh, okay.
And I chose RideTech.com back then because AirRideTechnologies.com was already taken.
Really? A name that long, huh?
Yeah, yeah. It was already taken, and so we shortened it up to RideTech, and those three things came together in I believe it was 9 or 10, no 8, oh wait, 10 years ago, and we decided to transition to the RideTech name, and there again, I had some people in the organization that were just absolutely against it. They said you're throwing away 12 years of
name
brand
recognition,
and everybody's going to assume there's going to be a problem. It's going to be a diversion of focus, and it's going to be this, that, and the other. And that was one of those times where we spent months discussing this, and I finally said, okay, I've heard everybody's arguments. This is what we are going to do, and those of you who are on board, this is how we're going to do it. And those of you who are not, either get on board or I guess you'll have to find something else.
Or get out. Yep.
Yeah. So we made that transition. In my mind at that time, that transition, I had planned on it taking 3 years, and we were going to take a hit during those 3 years. I knew that. What really happened, we did take a hit, but it was coincident. It wasn't because of the name change. The name change actually helped. It was because of the economy, and I call it a depression because I really think it was. Others call it the Great Recession, but I got in Jasper, Indiana, it was a depression.
It's bad, yep.
But that name change was effective. We were back up to speed in 4 months. We announced that name transition in August, and by SEMA, November of that year, I had people coming to my booth at SEMA requesting RideTech decals for their Optima cars.
Cool.
And these, a lot of these same people, I couldn't pay them to run an Air Ride Technology decal the year before.
Okay.
It was quite the deal.
Very cool. So that wasn't as bad as I kind of anticipated it to be. I kind of figured it was going to be some like real bad reason that.
Oh no!
It was,
well,
it didn't work out.
There were some people out there that were trying to say, well, they had to reorganize the company, and there was a secret bankruptcy.
Yep.
And no, there was none of that crap.
None of that.
Nothing.
It wasn't that complicated.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. There was, in fact, if you get a check from my organization now, the check, Air Ride Technologies Incorporated is still the official name of the company.
Okay.
Yep.
So what about something, tell us something you're doing right now that's got you really fired up.
Well, I'm neck deep in this R joint deal. We've transitioned all of our rod ends to the R joint thing, and it's just such a stunning improvement in handling and ride quality performance. It's hard to explain really. So we're busy developing new applications for that. About a year and a half ago, we hired a new marketing director, Steve Chrysos, who actually lives in Phoenix. So I was able to step away from that end of it, the nuts and bolts of it, to the effect that I actually moved out of my regular office, which was in the marketing department, and I moved my laptop and my folding table over into the engineering department. Mm-hmm. And we've been very successful in developing lots of new stuff over there. A lot of it you've already seen, some of it you haven't seen yet. A couple of, we came to SEMA last year with 5 brand new products. The Ride Pro X, the new air suspension electronic control system we had there. We had the R joint. We had a billet modular spindle. What else did we have? We had a couple of street grip applications. But, that was the first time that we've ever taken nothing but brand new product to SEMA. Very cool. And, it worked out great. And of course, the electronic shock program, I'm always, that's really got me intrigued as well. We do the Instinct electronic shocks now. We've been working with that for a couple of years, and we continue to refine the software and refine, the calibrations on that. I was involved in the beginnings of aftermarket electronic fuel injection 25 years ago. So all this is vaguely familiar to me. Back then we were hampered by sensor resolution and computing power, and now we're not. So the progress of electronic suspension controls is going to be very fast, and you're gonna see mainstream electronic shock control systems in the next 5 years. right now it's a $10,000 set of shocks. In 5 years, they'll be 2,000.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm still a little in awe of, because from what I've seen and what you've told me and what I've looked into, I mean, that's like an OE level suspension system.
For sure.
It's like
for sure.
Where it's doing like how many cycles, how many hertz is it reading?
Oh, it can make reactions in sub 6 millisecond range. So if you're driving along, what I tell customers, to put it in perspective, if you're driving along at 60 mile an hour and your tire falls in a pothole, that system is so quick, it'll make a calibration change before the wheel gets to the bottom of that pothole. And it'll make another change as it comes up the other side of it.
Yeah.
I can actually calibrate a car to eliminate the texture of the road. That's how quick it's. I tell people it's like racing on Velcro and driving on velvet.
Very cool. Yeah, that technology is super cool, because you guys have that on. Is it on the 48-hour Corvette, or was it on the 48-hour Corvette?
It's on the 48-hour Corvette that we sold at Bear Jackson in January. It's on the new Track 1 car, the Camaro, and it is on the original 48-hour Camaro, the yellow one that my son's going to be driving this summer. Man, I did not put it on the second gen 48-hour project yet, because I just I wanted to prove a point with building that car. I wanted to show people that you don't have to spend $250,000 to build a competitive autocross car. So it's got triple adjustables on it, but it eventually will have electronic shock waves on it.
Very cool.
Later on this summer, we'll get to that part of it.
Awesome. Well, let's take a quick break here, and then we'll be right back.
We all know owning a shop is difficult, so we created My Shop Assist to help you manage the various jobs. Whether you run a machine shop, a performance tuning shop, build off-road trucks, or even do powder coating, My Shop Assist can help you. It is completely online and will help you schedule the jobs, log time on each task, track parts orders, and take pictures of the work. You can even export your jobs from My Shop Assist into QuickBooks as invoices. So if you're interested to improve operations at your shop, check out myshopassist.com to start your 30-day free trial.
Okay, so we're back with Bret of RideTech, and want to get some more information about the company itself. So you're in Indiana, Jasper, Indiana. So How many employees do you have? What is kind of maybe just like the percentage breakdown of what their jobs are? How has the business kind of changed over the years as you've grown and then kind of reduced it and then grew it again?
Well, it's made a big transition, and I will say, I said earlier that the depression of 08, 9, and 10 was one of the toughest times, but it was also one of the most rewarding, because it forced us to restructure how we did things. Up until that point, I ran everything kind of by the seat of my pants. I mean, we had an accounting system and all that stuff, but we didn't do any forward budgeting. We didn't, we ran it like a founder-owned business, basically out of my back pocket. Well, about that
because money was coming in and things were good, huh?
Yeah,
Didn't
exactly.
matter.
You don't calculate how much you're going to spend. You spend everything you've got on advertising and promotion and inventory, and that's just the way you do it. Well, when that happened, we had to take a real hard look, and fortunately, a guy named BJ Elmore had started working for us at that time, and he had a background. He's got a double degree in accounting and business management, and he stepped up and he said, "I think I can help with this." And I said, "Well, awesome." So he worked his way from being a sales guy into now he's vice president of the company. He's executive vice president of RideTech, and he does a wonderful job of organizing all the accounting, all the budgeting, all the everything. And that's been an epic turnaround for us. He has a plan that he's got in place. I'm kind of the creative guy, and I got a vision. What I do matters 6 to 12 to 36 months down the road. he's the guy that executes all this.
Yep.
And, he's got a team under him. Corey Kryline handles our production and inventory control, and Steve Chrysos is our marketing guy, and Will Stinnett and Jeff Ware are our engineers, and they all just do a really, really good job.
And then how many total people do you employ there now?
We are in the high 50s. I think we're at 58 or 59 now. Yeah, there's a lot of them running around there. We're not very top heavy. So there's our weekly management meeting consists of 6 people. And we've got an accounts payable person and an HR person. But just about everybody else gets their hands dirty, so to speak. I've got 3 people in marketing. I got 7 people in engineering, and then just a bunch of guys in shipping and production. They all have a plan, and I got to tell you, they all pull in the same direction too. That's really important. There's not a lot of, at least I don't see it. There's not a lot of bad blood around there. Everybody's in generally a good mood, and they all work together. And that's one of the benefits of being in a small town. These guys all know each other. They've known each other since high school. In a lot of cases, they go to church together. They see each other at the grocery store. They used to date each other's sisters, whatever, just insert any small town cliche you want. But it really does help with the team building.
And, something that I've noticed about your company is you do seem to give back to them on a pretty regular basis. Like when I did the first Cars and Cones trip, we ended at your facility and you threw a giant barbecue car show, and that was just something that, you did, to kind of give back,
Yeah, we try to make it fun. So once a month we have a company-wide lunch that my wife Sharon and our property manager Mick, who's a grill master, they typically grill stuff, either pork chops or ribs or whatever. And we feed everybody, and we have a short discussion about important topics. What kind of how the race cars are doing, how sales are doing. Just 15 minutes of that, and then just sitting around for an hour eating some good food. So we do that once a month. A couple of weeks ago, this has kind of turned into an annual event now. We had a charity car show at the shop to benefit a local cancer survivor. And, I wasn't even there for it. I had another race I had to be at. And, Amanda at our shop put all that together, and they raised $8,000 for this local cancer survivor. Had about, it was kind of a rainy day, so they only had about 100 cars. But, we try to do stuff like that. We've been very blessed, both locally and nationwide with customers. So we try to help when and where we can.
Yeah, that's got to help, boost employee morale and, make them feel wanted and special. And, they got to go to work every day and work hard and do their stuff. So, it feels good if the boss says thank you.
Yeah, well, they earn it. They earn it. And it shows when you walk through the facility. Everybody that comes to visit RideTech in person comments on how clean and well organized the shop is, and it is, and I'm very proud of that. And it takes conscious effort on everybody's part. When we have an open house or a car show or something, we don't spend a lot of extra time cleaning up. Maybe a little bit, but these guys keep their home clean. They just don't let stuff sit around. First of all, I wouldn't allow it, but I it's not like I'm on their butt every day about it.
Yep.
I don't have to say anything at this point. Yeah.
Awesome.
And when somebody new comes in, peer pressure, that's the best trainer there is.
You got a herd mentality, but it's in a good way. It's not in a bad way.
Yeah, for sure.
You kind of touched on it. I always like to ask about the business plan. It sounded like, up until your depression, you were just flying by the seat of your pants. But now, are you guys generating, at least targets and, goals for the year?
Yes. So about 5-6 years ago, after, well, let's go back to 10 years ago, we started creating budgets. And that was a first for us. And I can't say that it was without pain, because it was very painful. It was painful for BJ to look me in the eye and say, "You can't spend this money." And I'm like, "The hell I can! It's mine. I can do whatever I want with it."
Yeah.
And he said, "True, but look at this. If you do this, here's what's going to happen."
Mm-hmm.
And he could show that to me in black and white, and of course, it allows you to make better decisions that way. And then about 6 years ago, we started having an annual long-range planning meeting.
Okay.
In the fall, in October, and we talk about all the stuff we're not going to do the next year. So I've got some. Everybody brings their agenda to the table. If Corey wants to buy some new machines, he brings that to the table. He has a business plan for it. He's got a projected ROI calculated for it. He's got several different options for it. In the engineering department, engineering and sales get together and say, okay, what's the next new product or series of products that we want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and what's the priority, but more importantly, we talk about the stuff we're not going to do, so we don't get distracted by that, and we try to live by that. And there's always side jobs, and there's always stuff that comes up, and you have to react to changing information. But all the managers have a game plan in place before the end of the year for what's going to happen the following year, and
Cool.
and it really helps. To the point that last year we stumbled a little bit. We got distracted by the 48-hour build at Barrett-Jackson, and we didn't get our budgets done until January. And that was a distraction. Looking back on it, that was a very, very costly distraction, and it would be hard to go back. Actually, you can't go back and change it, but it's something to remember for the future.
Yes. Don't make that mistake again, huh?
Yeah, distraction is an expensive problem.
Yeah, and saying no to stuff is something that an impulse control that a lot of people don't have. You can get in and over your head. And really get yourself into a pickle if you say yes to everything. And so that's something that I like to hear is like you're actively going out and saying the things you don't want to do.
Right. And every once in a while you take on a project, and I joke about it after the project is done and after I get my ass handed to me. So, well, now I remember why I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. It always seems like a good idea when you get started, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And even reading up on that, the 33 Ford you built, you were like, yeah, we wanted to just make something simple and easy and prove that anybody can do it. And then you ended up with like 10,000 hours into it. It snowballed way out of, and that happens, you got scope creep that's going to happen with any kind of vehicle build, but.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My buddy Kyle Tucker at DSC was joking about it one day. I had just bought a really nice second gen Camaro at Louisville about 3 years ago, and nice, clean, unrusted car, unmolested. And he looked at it and he said, "Yeah, it's a pretty good car. That and about $250,000 and make you a nice hot rod." I said, yeah, you're just about right.
Yeah. You guys have done it enough times to know what it really takes.
Well, by building our own cars, it keeps us in touch with the customer too. Not only is it a good demonstrator vehicle, but it puts us in the customer's shoes. One of the things that's changed for us in the last 2 or 3 years is we do at least 3 validations on applications. So we'll get a car in, usually we'll buy a car because we don't know how long it's going to take or what we're going to have to do to it. So we just buy it, and we'll develop the system on that car. And then after the system is done, or we think it's done, then we'll go get another car and fit a pre-production prototype on it. And then the third validation is always done off-site, because when you do it on-site, it's way too easy to say, oh, that bolt didn't fit, I'll just get one out of the bolt bin, and then you forget to write it down, and then the customer ends up with a wrong fastener or whatever, When you do it off-site with minimal amounts of resources, every little mistake shows up. and is therefore documented. And we always video, not always, but we're getting in the habit of videoing that third validation and use that as an installation guide or training tape or whatever.
That's very cool.
So, yeah, it's just another part of the evolution of the business.
Yeah, and I mean that goes a long way, because if you start, I mean, I've seen products by smaller companies for the import stuff where, like, they build a kit, let's say they build an aftermarket turbo kit, and then they ship it to you and it's got the wrong clamps on it, and like the dump tubes don't line up, and this bolt, you can't access this bolt, or you have to do this bolt first before you do another bolt,
right.
And it's like, man, like, did you guys just fab one up and then just send it to me? So it's it's good to hear that that's kind of an R&D, validation that you guys are doing to make sure the customer can actually put the product on the car. And that's got to cost you a lot of time and money, as far as releasing it, but you're front end loading the effort to reduce it in the back, like the far thinking.
Well, our products are not cheap, and even relative to other manufacturers in the market, we're not the cheapest. We're amongst the most expensive. And I don't apologize for the price, nor do I ever want to apologize for the quality in either performance or installation or anything. We really do go out of our way to make this stuff as easy to install as possible and document it. Rodney Mason does our instructions, and he honestly does a really nice job of it. Back in the early days, it's kind of interesting. I used to have my wife proofread the instructions.
That sounds like a good idea.
Not necessarily for typos or anything like that, but if she told me that I think I've got a reasonably good grasp on how to put this on, then I know. And she's a car girl, but she doesn't really get her hands dirty. She just likes to ride around in cool cars. But she knows the difference between a bushing and a ball joint anyhow. So if she can understand the instructions, then I know we got a good deal going.
Awesome. That makes sense. So what about like your product mix? So you make a lot of stuff. Is there, do you have like a halo product that, just is kind of the bread and butter? Or is it actually split up, pretty evenly between the air ride stuff and the kits, like the street grip kit, or, your shock, your Fox shocks, your triple adjustable ones? Like, is there something that just knocks it out of the park?
Well, we've been blessed with an amazingly even mix of stuff. I get a weekly sales sheet that gives me the top, in ranking sales dollars wise, and early Camaro systems are always near the top. C10 stuff, Impala stuff. It was kind of interesting. I was really afraid that the introduction of the coilover was going to cannibalize the air suspension segment. In reality, it actually boosted it, because when we were just air ride technologies, people wouldn't even ask which is better, coilover or air, because they knew what answer they would get, or thought they knew.
Yep.
And now, since we have both, that's the big question. What do I need? Do I need air or you need coilover? And at this point, depending on how active our military customer is in any one year, it's about an even split between air and non-air systems. And the coilover business has been just an addition. It didn't cannibalize anything.
That's cool.
It's really been a good deal.
And so you still got the military contracts, the big contracts for stuff?
Yeah. Actually, this is one of their years to be active, so this is going to be a good year.
That's very good. Yeah, I just recently interviewed one of the like the product manager, marketing guy from Lund International, and they have a company that does the steps, like the side steps that move, that like come out when you open the door, and they created that, and I was like, I thought OEs did that. And he was like, no, we license that. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how that works. So like, they have this whole other side of their business that deals with, these large contracts, and then they get to do a lot of the fun stuff, to kind of keep, that's what the customer sees, is all the fun stuff. But, they're making a lot of their money on these big these big contracts, which is not something to rely on, but it is something that, can really make this business successful.
The mindset, and I've got one guy, Johnny Murder, that handles all of what we call the industrial accounts. Basically, I think it even says on his business card, he sells everything that doesn't have a part number.
Okay.
So he will go out and chase these military contracts and these OE contracts. And when I say OE, I'm not talking about GM, Ford, or Chrysler. I'm talking about small coach builders that may build 200 cars a year, or trailer builders that may build 500 trailers a year, stuff like that. We're in a perfect position to work with customers like that because compared to a true OE, like a Ford or a GM, we can move pretty quickly. We just developed a complete four-corner air suspension for a luxury van conversion company out of Florida. And we did it in about 6 months. And if that would have been handed to a larger company, it probably would have been 2.5 years.
Yeah.
But we did it in 6 months, and they're happy with it. They're really happy with it. Now, are we gonna sell it? I don't know. Depends if he can sell it, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
The gestation period for such projects is much longer than a retail customer. Retail customer, from the time of first contact to the point of sale, may be as short as 5 minutes, or it may take a few weeks or a couple of months till they make a decision. By definition, these OE contracts, some of them are years in the making.
Yeah.
And it takes a different mindset to approach that.
So what about advertising? You said, obviously getting started at the time period that you did, magazines were all the raves. So I have seen you guys at pretty much every single event I've ever gone to, but what is kind of your marketing mix? You have a marketing team now. What are their focuses, and, kind of how are you directing your marketing dollars throughout the, plethora of available avenues?
Well, with my background in doing event displays, obviously that was one of the big deals. And, there's no better way to demonstrate your product than live in person. If you can get your customer to touch it, feel it, and care about it, then, if he has any desire for it at all, he's going to buy it at some point anyhow. So one of our first displays was a bare chassis with an air suspension on it. And, I made a little platform to stand on the back of it and, air it up and air it down, and it makes a little noise, and it makes a little movement. And, you could just see the gears turning in these people's heads. And I think we probably built, I don't know, a dozen of those things over the years. We still carry one on the trailer.
Yep.
So event displays are really important. Trent Summers takes care of that for us now. He's been doing it forever. And we do 23, 24 events a year. I used to spend a huge amount of money on print advertising, several $100,000 a year, and then when the depression hit, that money dried up. It wasn't. There's just no question. I couldn't spend it anymore, and I was very, very concerned that cutting my advertising was going to hurt, but I just didn't have a choice. So what happened was we decreased our print advertising by about 90%, and we refocused our efforts on forums and social media. And that was at a time that Facebook was just starting to catch fire. We went from 5,000 Facebook followers in 2008 to 265,000 today. And, we do a huge amount through Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. And, Steve and Jason Brady and Mike take care of all that stuff. I don't know all the nuts and bolts about it. They take wonderful care of it. I look at these reports every week that show engagement and this, that, and the other. And it's like, somehow, we're turning all this, this noise back into money. So,
yeah, that's the end goal. But it's a very long play with the social media stuff, especially as the algorithms change. It's astonishing.
It's definitely a moving rabbit. And, you were talking about product mix a while ago. The Street Grip product line, like we put on your Camaro a couple of years ago, It's a wonderful product line. It's really simple. It's really effective, and it's really easy to install. And it's an entry level system. We introduced that 2 years ago, and it is just now starting to catch fire. So there's a long distance there between launching a product and it really starting to take off.
I would have thought that one would have been immediate, because it's, for people that don't know, it's pretty much a bolt-on suspension kit for. You offer it on almost every unibody car now, I'm assuming, but
yeah, we've got it for I think 14 different applications.
Okay.
And I tell everybody it's a suspension for a car guy that doesn't really know anything about cars in most cases. It's dual rate coil springs and Delrin bushings for the stock control arms and adjustable shocks and sway bars. And in the leaf spring cars, it's composite leaf springs. And it's just a really clean, simple installation. No ride height adjustability. I get customers that want it. Well, I want my car to set lower. I say, well, you're going to need to buy a coil or an air suspension.
Yeah, this one's it's like a set it and forget it. And we even did, we had the opportunity to do back-to-back testing on that autocross weekend. It wasn't apples to apples, but we at least got to do it. And man, that was like night and day difference, because it lowers and levels, it increases the spring rate and the sway bar, and then you get the adjustability of the shock. And a single adjustable shock is too much for most people anyway. It's again, you're going to set it once and you're probably never really going to change it. And I've
probably talked more people out of triple adjustables than I have into them over the years. And invariably, the guy that buys the triples, they will call and say, well, where do I set the knobs at? I said, well, I can give you some guidelines, but if I knew exactly where to set them, you wouldn't need knobs.
Yeah.
I tell everybody, don't be afraid of the knobs. Explore the extents. You can't break it. We got a 1 million 1 mile warranty on those shocks, so you can't break it. Just see what your car does.
Yeah.
But
so
I've told lots of people with the triple adjustables that said you'd be better off buying the singles and then spending the difference on brakes or tires or steering wheel or seats or something else that will improve the performance of your car. We would both be happier. You would be happier with a better performing car, and I will be happy because you'll like my product better.
Yep. And that goes a long way from, the owner's mouth of underselling his products, selling the customer what they need, not what makes the most money or, is the best for you, is really a long-term, I guess, a business model that's probably good to follow.
Well, what makes money for me is him telling all his buddies how great his car rides and handles, and then they come back and buy stuff. So that's the end game on it. I couldn't survive with one customer. It takes thousands of them to do that, to support 60 people.
Yep. So what is your work schedule like? Are you back down to a normal or even subnormal, kind of work week? Because, you got 2 kids and, one of them's just, now done with high school. But, have you been able to keep a good work-life balance over the years?
The line between work and play is very, very fuzzy for me because I love playing with cars, and what I do for a living is what most people do for a hobby. So, at this point, I'm going to be gone for most of the month of June. We're going to take an actual family vacation next week in Florida. But after that, Andy and I are going to take the race cars, and we're going to go up to Summit to an event. We're going to Indy to an event. We're going to Iowa and then to Ohio.
You've got your family part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Sharon and Andy and Sarah have always been, part of it. Andy's probably more enthusiastic than Sarah is at this point, but
yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't not, if it was a real job, I wouldn't, I'd be looking at retiring probably, but I'm about as close to retired as any one person can get, and still get a paycheck.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like you've structured your business to be able to run without you. And I think that's that's any entrepreneur's dream, or that should be their goal, is that the business will run itself.
Well, I've always been a accused of hiring people that were smarter than me.
Mm-hmm.
And my reply is, hell, I didn't know I had a choice.
Yeah.
I've got some really, really good people in key positions, and they do a great job. I don't need to be there. I got my iPad and my cell phone. I'm standing here staring at my iPad right now. The cover, there's a red leather cover on it that is just almost worn through. This
Yeah.
thing is in my hands probably 6 hours a day.
That's cool.
And I can do anything I need to do with a cell phone and email, and I'm basically a gateway for information at this point.
That's awesome. So this is kind of a fun question, a little digging deep kind of question. What is something that you do differently to make yourself successful, that you can kind of share with our listeners?
Wow. I don't know. I guess I never really thought about it too much. I've always tried to build products that nobody else does. And I guess that comes from the original Air Ride Technologies days. I don't consider us a low-cost provider of anything. I consider us a unique provider. When we develop product, it's never with a price point in mind. It's always with a performance goal in mind, and then we figure out what it's going to cost. So that's part of the development process. Money, the price isn't part of it. The need for performance is, and then we try to figure out how to do it in the most efficient manner.
Very cool.
So, I guess I wouldn't call it a secret. I think there's a lot of successful businesses that have that same philosophy, but it seems to work for us.
What about something that you may struggle with in business, and how do you deal with it? Kind of thinking of like time management or cash flow or customer relations. Is there anything that you still kind of struggle with?
The cash flow is a concern for any business, no matter what size. But I say that we haven't had cash flow problems in probably 8-9 years. During the Depression, I keep calling it the Depression, that was a problem. There were, and we approach that a little differently too. Most people, when they don't have money to pay you, you never hear from them. They disappear. I made it a rule then that every week, every vendor got a check or a phone call. We always stayed in, and there were weeks that we just didn't have a lot of money to pay bills, but every vendor that didn't get a check got a phone call. And they were very gracious about it. We never had big money problems. We were 30 days behind at worst in some cases, but hell, I think some people that's just their normal business operations.
Yeah.
But we try to keep our bills paid on time or before time, and it rounds off a lot of corners. I got to tell you, when you call a vendor and you ask for a favor or expediting a delivery or something, they remember who pays and when and how.
Yep.
They really do.
So tell us like the 1 year plan for the business. So, you guys do your yearly meetings. So, what's kind of the goals for the 1 year, and, kind of a quick synopsis?
Well, it varies by department, I guess. In engineering, which is what I am mostly wrapped up in now, after the huge mass of development stuff we did last year, this year we decided to clean up the corners, finish up some lingering projects, just kind of clean up some corners, refine some existing product. It's not, so when we go to SEMA this year, we're not going to have any groundbreaking new product, I don't think. It'll be refinements on existing product, and stuff like that.
And so the fun question here's like the big, hairy, audacious goal. What's like a 5-year plan for you and the business?
Well, I would love to tell you that we have some big epic plans in place, but the reality is we want to keep doing more of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be replacing some equipment. We're going to be adding some new equipment, and just slow, steady, methodical, controlled growth. I've had years where I've grown 30-40% a year, and that's a really inefficient way to grow. You can grow revenue and you can not grow profits. That's really easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to keep it to a 10% growth, 10-12%, and that's controllable and profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to do once you get to a certain size. Things stabilize a little bit. Your fortunes don't rise and fall with one or two customers. It's things even out. In the early days, it was common to see revenue swings, sales swings of 50% from month to month.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Now we see it within a 5 to 7% range from.
Yeah, much easier to predict when your swings aren't so violent.
It is, yes.
Yeah, and you guys, I mean, I was probably 1 or 2 years ago. You guys actually built like a mini autocross course at your facility, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Allows you to kind of test some of the stuff legally, I guess.
Yeah. The test track thing has worked out quite well. We don't use it a huge amount because, applications are that they don't happen every day. They happen every few months. So we probably use it as much for marketing and video stuff as we do
testing,
actual engineering testing. But right now we're working on adding a ride quality segment to that area.
Okay.
We can go across a calibrated
like a washboard,
bunch of obstacles. Yeah, similar to that. Yeah.
And
so that's cool.
Are you guys, planning on building any more, like the buildings? Because you've got a pretty large facility.
I've got 10 acres there. I got 3 buildings.
And you own that land and those buildings?
Yes.
Okay.
We do. Which is probably a little unusual for some businesses, but it's very common in a small town. You just own the facility you're in. It's worked out well for us. We've got plenty of room for expansion should we choose to. But I think we're going to concentrate on making things more efficient.
Okay.
We moved into our last new building about 10 years ago. So yeah, think about that too. I just put up a 30,000 foot fabrication facility and moved into it in December of 2008. And took on all that expense. So that was
bad timing there.
At the same time, sales were on a
death spiral.
Yeah. Like it was their job, So a lot of things hit during that period of time.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah, I really like to hear the focus on efficiency instead of revenue. Do more with less can go a long way and, really help, increase your profits without having to, expend a lot of money on space and people and time and headaches. So that's something that I really appreciate to hear. And I'm glad you guys are, working towards that still, even after all these years. It's something that never stops.
Well, there's it's really the least expensive way to optimize profits. Developing new product and finding new customers is expensive, but refining your products and my goal is to never cut the quality. In fact, to increase the quality. And it, when you transition from a small business to something larger, it's actually pretty easy to take cost out of a product just by economy of scale. Whereas if you were only building 25 of something and now you're building 250, maybe it makes sense to make a casting or forging, depending on what the item is. And one good example was, our Shockwave product. We've selling enough of those now that we've been able to justify the costs of doing an injection molded composite for the end treatments.
Okay.
And we use a snap-on rubber air spring now that we developed with Firestone instead of the bead ring style. So, we've been able to take a lot of cost out of that product and make it better. So, it's the best of both worlds. And so that's what the next 5 years is going to hold for us. There will be some pretty cool new stuff, and probably the electronic shock program is going to be making most of the noise. There's a couple other things we're working on too, in the air suspension market, internal ride height sensor and a more efficient compressor and some stuff like that. But, those will be incremental improvements Nothing revolutionary, I guess, like the electronic shocks.
Yep. So, one last question here that I just kind of like to ask our guests to kind of get a little eye into, who you are as a person is, what is your like daily driver vehicle? Not a race car, not a car you guys are like working on. What is like going to go to the grocery store kind of vehicle that you drive, on a regular basis?
Probably the most mundane thing that I have is a 2017 GMC pickup. That's been lowered with a set of 22 inch forged lines on it.
Nice.
But like all last summer, I drove my 57 big window truck that's about 3 inches off the ground. For the whole month of June, when we're traveling, I'll be driving the orange 48-hour Camaro. I've gotten rid of a bunch of them now, but I've still got 25 or 30 hot rods sitting around here.
Yeah, I've seen some of them going to auction, and someday I'll buy one of them, but someday.
Yeah, you sell two, you buy another one. You sell three, you buy two more. But we use those cars. We use them for developing product. We use them to display at shows. We use them for
racing,
product refinement, and I've only got two cars right now that rarely get driven. My blown injected car, I don't drive it much. I got a Boss 429 Mustang that hasn't moved in a couple of years, and I got a all original numbers matching LS6 Chevelle that I can't bring myself to modify because it's so original, and,
nice.
And I can't stand to drive it because you can't drive those silly things. Not after you've driven one with a good suspension.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's night and day going back to the old stuff, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. It's a good thing. I've also, joked with other people about, what do you do to a muscle car to make it better? And anything,
literally anything.
Anything you do is an improvement. Anything.
Oh man, that's great. So, just to end here, if people are interested in finding more information about your company, where should they go?
RideTech.com. Pretty easy to remember.
And you guys have a Facebook and Instagram page as well. They can go visit and keep up with you guys.
Sure do. We got about 265,000 followers on Facebook, and I don't even know how many on Instagram. I'm not really an Instagram guy, but the Facebook page is really active, and we try to do a good job of keeping relevant content on there. It's not we try to avoid just hey, buy my stuff type post. We try to post up stuff that's of interest to a wide range of people.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Bret. I really appreciate, again, you taking some time to talk with us and, tell us about your company. So, thanks again.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.